Hey guys, this is the Texas Bone Hunter. My bud took me again out to the woods, and I really appreciate it. But today we are just going to do a few more shed hunts for you. And this video actually is going to be better than the last video because I was supposed to give tips, but as the last video shows, I was kind of distracted because I came in close contact with a pretty nice sized pig and it kind of freaked me out. So this time I brought my big knife just to be safe. But yeah, this video I'm going to just give you guys a little more tips. And number one tip for me right now to give you guys is just dedicate one whole day, maybe Saturday, Sunday, or even the whole weekend. Just dedicate that to the woods. And if you do that, I guarantee you guys will find a shed. Now, for your first tip, if you ever come across a fence line or a creek that you can hear behind me, that's a great spot to look for sheds. Why? Deer will travel this fence line to jump over or go underneath. And if you're lucky enough, the impact of the force of the deer jumping over the fence line will knock the antler loose. And if the deer is crawling underneath the fence line, hopefully the antler will get caught up in the fence. But for me, I got really lucky. I came across a fence line and a creek. So what I did is I walked between the two and I found a trail going downhill. And going downhill is a better chance of also finding antlers because they're bobbing their heads up and down, and hopefully that antler will pop off and fall off. And as I showed you before, I came across a little tiny 8-point in the creek bottom. Okay, here's another tip for you. If you see a trail, travel it. There's nothing wrong with traveling a trail. Now, a lot of people say trail hopping is bad, but in my opinion, I think it works out great for me. What I usually do is I get on a trail, travel about 50 to 80 yards, stop, look around me, look at the ground for any sheds. If I don't see anything, then I get off the trail. Because in my opinion, if you don't see anything by like any good natural sign like deer scat, deer tracks, or any deer rubs, then that trail probably is not being used as often. Now, what you also want to do is travel a trail that has a lot of thickets around it. And when I'm talking about thick stuff, I'm talking about dead logs going over the trail. Or you're having a lot of greenbrier on that trail. What greenbrier is a lot of vines that have thorns on it. And it's also a good source of protein for the deer when they have nothing else to eat. So if you're lucky, the deer will be traveling that trail to eat some greenbrier, or traveling that trail just as a daily routine. The antler of the deer will get tangled up in the greenbrier. And if there is a giant log going across the trail, travel that trail because the deer will jump over that log. These deer aren't going to be too lazy to jump over a log, especially the bucks. They want to get to point A to point B as quick as possible because they don't want to be seen and they want to be in that thick stuff for protection. It's their comfort zone. So if you see a log, check both sides because the impact of the deer jumping over the log will cause the antler to pop off. Okay, my last tip, I told you to follow the trail until you come across some thick stuff, and that's what I did. I'm in a bunch of thick stuff right now, and as you can tell by the antler I just found, I am sitting on the log that the deer probably had to jump over. Now, I found an old scrape back there, and I think it's old because I can't really see a lot of the hoof marks of the deer. But this brings back in mind of another tip because I am some thick stuff that these bucks and does like to be in. This is their bedding area. And my tip for you is don't shed hunt unless you know the deer are already dropping their antlers. Here in Texas, the deer drop their antlers from February to March to April. And sometimes even May. That's how late they will shed. And if you shed hunt any earlier than that, you'll be pretty much kicking the deer out of their bedding area. And that's where a lot of people actually find their antlers, is in bedding areas. Now, you don't want to scare off a deer when the sheds aren't going to even be dropping yet, because they'll still have their antlers and they'll run off and go in some other thick stuff, and you'll have to go deeper in the woods and dedicate a whole nother Saturday or Sunday to go look for them. So I can't stress enough to you how important it is to know when to shed hunt, because if you don't know when to shed hunt, you'll be spooking deer out of their natural bedding area and they'll have to find a new one, and then you'll have to go into deeper in the woods and you'll have to have a harder time finding more antlers. Now I can tell this is a fresh shed because it has a nice glossy coat to it and the squirrels and rabbits haven't found it at all. There's not a ring around the base of the antler, but it's still a nice shed, maybe about a week or two old. And the reason I like to shed hunt is because it gives me a visual to see what type of deer is out here, how big the deer is, and maybe a good area to put up a tree stand or a ground block. And here in Texas, a lot of the deer like to shed their antlers kind of late, sometimes even early. Right now, deer are dropping their antlers from February, March, April, and May. So if you're out here in Texas and you have land, go out there, look for antlers, and hopefully you'll find a nice good spot to set up a tree stand or a ground block. Not a bad shed, guys. Now I found this shed on the hillside, and my tip for you is to always look on the side of the hills. To glance at the hills with binoculars or just start walking the side of the hills. And I'm predicting is that the deer are bedding on top of this hill and they're coming down to feed. Now this shed is probably about a year old. It still has a little bit of gloss to it, but it has some white at the tip, so it's been out in the sun for a bit. But other than that, it's a pretty good shed. Very nice shed. I have never found a shed in a tree before. I'm thinking he was just rubbing up, trying to get something off his antler maybe, or I don't really see any cuts or anything on this tree other than a few broken branches, so he might have been rubbing. But this is a very nice antler. It's freaking huge. Brow tines on this thing are, wow, this is the biggest antler I have actually. And it's probably about a few years old, has a few nibbles on it from the squirrels and maybe rodents that are climbing up in the tree. Now another good tip for you is just get off the trail sometimes. Just go out somewhere random, just random. That's what I did. I was following this trail for a good maybe 300 yards, didn't find anything, no rubs, no anything. And I started looking around, I was like, hey, this looks promising, so just check these open fields too. Check the edges of these open fields because you'll never know what you can find. And sometimes getting off of a trail, trail hopping, is the best thing you can do. Because look what I just found. And I wasn't even trying to find this one, honestly. I was just walking to get back to the truck. Now, this is actually a good way to end the video, actually, a good find. Thank you guys for watching, I appreciate it, and comment, rate, and subscribe.